In a world filled with tension and uncertainty, major global events unfold daily. Today, we examine the rising costs of the Iran war, a significant shift in U.S. military strategy, and the ongoing implications of international relations. Here are today's top 10 stories you need to know. In a controversial announcement, President Trump asserted that he does not require congressional authorization for the ongoing military operations in Iran. Citing a ceasefire, he claimed that seeking such authorization under the War Powers Act would be unconstitutional. This declaration has sparked heated discussions among lawmakers and legal experts regarding the limits of presidential power in military engagements. Critics argue that bypassing Congress undermines the legislative branch's role in matters of war. Trump's administration has maintained that the current military actions are justified and necessary for national security. The assertion comes amid increasing scrutiny of the administration's military strategy, which some believe lacks transparency. As the situation develops, the ramifications of this legal stance could lead to more significant political battles in Congress. Observers will be watching closely to see if this claim alters the dynamics of military oversight moving forward. The conflict in Iran continues to escalate, prompting widespread concern among international observers and human rights organizations. Since the onset of hostilities, military operations have intensified, leading to significant civilian displacement and extensive damage to essential infrastructure, including hospitals and schools. This crisis has roots in long-standing political tensions, exacerbated by economic sanctions and regional rivalries. Global leaders are increasingly urging for peace talks, recognizing the urgent need for dialogue to mitigate the humanitarian catastrophe. However, diplomatic efforts have so far yielded little progress, leaving many to fear that prolonged military engagement could destabilize not just Iran, but the entire Middle East. The economic fallout has already affected neighboring countries, creating an unstable environment that threatens regional security. As the international community grapples with the implications of this ongoing crisis, the urgency for a diplomatic resolution becomes more pronounced. Future negotiations must prioritize humanitarian concerns to pave the way for lasting peace and stability in the region. As the costs associated with the Iran war mount, the U.S. military budget is under increasing scrutiny from both sides of the political aisle. Lawmakers are questioning whether the current level of defense spending is sustainable, especially in light of pressing domestic needs. The Pentagon is expected to present a revised budget proposal in the coming weeks, which will likely reflect the financial strains of ongoing military operations. Some budget analysts argue that prioritizing military funding over social programs could lead to significant long-term consequences for American society. Advocates for military spending contend that national security must remain a top priority, but the public is beginning to demand more accountability. The conversation around military funding is evolving, and it remains to be seen how the administration will balance these competing interests. The outcome of this budget discussion could shape U.S. defense policy for years to come. The ongoing conflict in Iran has ignited a wave of global tensions, prompting countries worldwide to react to the military engagement. The situation escalated following recent U.S. military actions, which have raised alarms about potential wider conflicts. Historical grievances and long-standing rivalries in the region add complexity as nations grapple with the implications of these developments. Many are expressing concern that any miscalculation could lead to a broader confrontation involving multiple states. Diplomatic channels are being tested as allies and adversaries alike seek to find a way through this precarious situation. Some countries advocate for tighter sanctions against Iran, while others argue for renewed diplomatic efforts to de-escalate tensions. The international community stands at a critical juncture, with the potential for significant geopolitical shifts looming on the horizon. Regional leaders are particularly anxious as the conflict threatens to spill over borders and destabilize neighboring areas. In the coming weeks, the effectiveness of diplomatic initiatives will be tested as the world awaits a resolution to this escalating crisis. The imposition of economic sanctions on Iran continues to have a profound impact on the nation's economy and its citizens. The These sanctions, originally enacted to deter Iran's nuclear ambitions, have intensified in recent years, exacerbating existing economic challenges. Ordinary Iranians are increasingly feeling the strain, with many struggling to afford basic necessities as inflation spirals out of control. Humanitarian organizations are sounding alarms, warning that the situation is becoming increasingly dire, with calls for international assistance growing louder. Critics of the sanctions argue that they disproportionately affect civilians, undermining the quality of life without effectively curbing the government's nuclear activities. As public discontent rises, the Iranian government faces mounting pressure, raising concerns about potential unrest. The international community remains divided on the effectiveness of these measures, with some advocating for a renewed diplomatic approach to address underlying issues. In the coming months, the Iranian economy's resilience will be tested, and the global response could shape the future of both Iran and its international relations. The global response to the ongoing war in Iran has varied significantly across nations and organizations. While countries like Israel and Saudi Arabia have openly supported the U.S. military actions, viewing them as necessary for regional stability, others, such as Russia and China, have condemned these actions as violations of international law. The United Nations has called for an emergency meeting, urging member states to discuss the escalating situation and explore potential pathways for de-escalation. Humanitarian organizations are mobilizing resources to address the growing crisis as civilians face dire conditions caught in the crossfire. Protests advocating for a ceasefire are becoming more pronounced, erupting in major cities around the world, highlighting widespread public dissent against military interventions. The international community finds itself at a pivotal moment as leaders experience mounting pressure to take a definitive stand. The diplomatic ramifications of this conflict could reshape global alliances, influencing international relations for years to come. As discussions continue, the need for a unified and effective response becomes increasingly critical, with hopes that upcoming negotiations may lead to a lasting peace agreement. As the conflict in Iran continues, a humanitarian crisis is rapidly escalating, with reports indicating that thousands of civilians are displaced and struggling to survive. Many are living in dire conditions, lacking access to basic necessities such as food, clean water, and medical care. The international humanitarian community is mobilizing efforts to provide aid, but logistical challenges, including security concerns and damaged infrastructure, are severely hindering their response. Aid organizations warn that without immediate assistance, the situation could deteriorate further, leading to increased mortality rates. Medical facilities are overwhelmed, grappling with an influx of patients suffering from war-related injuries and untreated illnesses. Shortages of food and clean water are becoming critical, exacerbating the suffering of vulnerable populations, particularly children and the elderly. The psychological toll on affected families is immeasurable, leaving many grappling with trauma and despair. As global leaders face mounting pressure to take swift action, discussions about potential ceasefires and negotiations are ongoing. The urgency for a collaborative international response cannot be overstated. Moving forward, it is essential for nations to prioritize humanitarian access, ensuring that aid reaches those in desperate need. Immediate action could mitigate further suffering and provide hope for a more stable future in Iran. The ongoing war in Iran has reached a critical juncture, with costs spiraling and consequences becoming more dire. As of now, the Pentagon has officially reported that the military engagement has already cost $25 billion, a staggering amount in just over 2 months. This figure was revealed during a hearing focused on military expenditures and has raised alarms among lawmakers concerned about the sustainability of such spending. Historically, U.S. military interventions have often led to significant financial burdens, and this conflict appears to be no exception. The economic implications are profound, not only for the military budget, but also for the broader U.S. economy. Lawmakers are increasingly worried that mounting costs could divert funds from pressing domestic priorities such as healthcare, education, and infrastructure. Critics argue that this financial strain could lead to cuts in essential government services, disproportionately affecting vulnerable populations. Meanwhile, the humanitarian impact on civilians is escalating, with countless lives disrupted due to violence and instability. International calls for a ceasefire are growing louder, emphasizing the urgency for a resolution to prevent further suffering. The stakes are high, and the coming weeks could determine the future trajectory of U.S. military involvement in the region. As negotiations intensify, the potential for a diplomatic solution remains a critical focus for all stakeholders involved.